All right, so building on the Pilates foundations that we've covered so far. So we've covered pelvic stability and we've covered breathing. In this video, we're gonna cover ribcage placement. For me, I'll be honest, ribcage placement has taken me years to understand. And maybe it's just the way I carry my own body that I couldn't really understand some of it, but now as I continue to learn, I understand the concepts a lot more. So when you lie down on your back, what you want is the back of your ribs to be connected to the mat. And this is what I struggled with was, of course my ribs are touching the mat, I'm lying down. And then when you lift your arms, the ribs can lift and create an arch. When I first was learning Pilates, this was never an issue for me. As I've aged and as my strength and posture changes, these things change. So if you find your neutral, so your hip bones and your pubic bone are nice and level, and your lower abdominals are engaged, and if your ribs are nice and wide against the mat, there's no popping of the ribs. Where if maybe I have some mid-thoracic tension, I might be a little popped through the front of the ribs, and then there's space in that mid-back. And that's what I'm trying to avoid when we talk about rib cage placement. So engaging the distance between the ribs and the hips will help. Now, often the rib pop will show up in various exercises. So if you have your arms at your side and you inhale, lift your arms. I'm going to be a little dramatic here, but as I lift my arms, the rib cage lifts, but I also went all the way to the mat. And then when I come back down, the ribs lift. Well, then I'm creating the movement from the wrong position. So I want my ribs to stay still as my arms go overhead, which does decrease how far I can go. So I want to stay connected through the front side of my body. Keep the ribs down as I lift the arms, and then lower the arms back down. So you can practice this with your frontal raise, arm raises, just keeping that rib cage placement, keeping that abdominal placement. You can also challenge it in different ranges of motion by going in circles. So keeping the ribs connected. And if you find that you are lifting through the front of your ribs, you might need to decrease the size of your circles. And then also making sure that you challenge it in both directions, because sometimes the rib pop will only occur in one direction. So if I were to do a roll up, for example, so I'm going to straighten my legs, arms are extended overhead. I don't want to start with my arms on the mat because it caused my ribs to lift. It also caused me to arch into my lumbar. So to get that proper rib cage placement, my arms are extended where I can maintain this position. So this is my starting position with the arms. Inhale, the arms come forward, nod the chin, scoop the abdominals, roll through the spine, keeping the abs engaged as I reach for the toes. Inhale as you slowly start to articulate through the spine, back down, placing one segment at a time. And then again, only letting the arms extend as far overhead that I can keep that rib placement, so I'm not touching the mat. Inhale as the arms come forward, nod the chin. Exhale, scoop the abdominals, roll up and over. And then inhale as you slowly go back, and then articulate through the spine, one vertebrae at a time. Now, another thing that has really helped me when I think about my ribs is my upper body flexion and lifting the head and shoulders. So a lot of times when people come into flexion and lift their head and shoulders, they lift their head and we got a lot of tension into the front of their neck. We want to lift the head from our upper abdominals. I like to always say, picture your six-pack. It is there. Even though you may tell me that you don't see it or it doesn't exist, it is there. So, whether you keep your arms at your side or you place your hands behind your head, you want to make sure that your arms are not resting on the mat, because again, that can cause a little bit of a pop through the rib cage. So if you do choose to put your hands behind the head, elevate your elbows so that you can properly position your shoulders and not jeopardize that rib cage placement. You nod your chin so that you look in the direction that you are going to move. Notice my head has not lifted off the mat. From there, think of dropping the back of your ribs down towards the mat, engaging that six-pack. Exhale as you peel your head and shoulders up while maintaining your neutral in your pelvis, and then controlling it back down. So again, I'm going to nod my chin and look in the direction. Exhale, feel the ribs drop down towards the mat. Yes, my ribs are already connected, but that engagement of dropping the ribs helps me lift the head and shoulders up off the mat, and then control it back down. Let's do 3 more. Inhale, nod the chin. Exhale, engage your six-pack to peel your head and shoulders up off the mat, and then control it down. Another cue that people like is picture a pencil right where your ribs are, and then flex up and over that pencil to create that flexion, and then control it back down. 1 more. Inhale to nod the chin. Exhale, drop the ribs to peel the head and shoulders up, and then control it back down. So earlier I mentioned maintain your neutral. And that is important too, because if you flatten your back and then come up, notice the height difference. It allowed me to get up higher, but I created the flexion from the wrong space in my spine. I want my lumbar to stay still. I'm trying to focus that flexion from the mid-upper back, so that if I'm coming into my single leg stretch or my crisscross, that is where I'm lifting from the base of my ribs to create that flexion, and then I'm not feeling strain in my neck, and I'm maintaining that pelvic stability as I go through the exercises. So I hope that helped with rib cage placement, and then I'm just gonna have a short little video on cervical placement and cervical spine.